You are now tuned into Difficult People Chronicles. I'm seriously focused Johnny SF Johnny. Today's a Q&A, Complied Demand. Johnny, I'm a high official who has 80 plus people underneath me. I was led to your podcast by my best friend and colleague, and also my father. The problem I'm having is whenever there is a meeting with staff, I'm told I need to do what they do. I feel they need to stop complaining and do their job, what they're paid to do. It is always a fight with them, and my problems with them are getting bigger. I need to know how to get them to comply with my demands. First, I would ask you to be honest and be honest with yourself. Do you know the process? Do you know the process of what they do? The reason being is that as a leader, you don't want to be caught with your pants down, meaning you don't want to get embarrassed. And also, I would want to know that you can be honest with yourself and not deflect whatever situation is going on onto someone else or some other problem and not owning up to responsibility. You need to know the process. So I would ask you that first. And also check out the podcast, Learning from the Beginning. Number two, I would ask you to take a poll because you say you have 80 plus people and write down three things that your staff finds to be a problem with you. Write it on a board and take a poll of how many people have that same particular problem and drop it in a box. They could do it anonymously because we wouldn't want to see you get stuck in your feelings. Let's just say that. If the truth comes out that everybody, 80 plus people, feel the same way. And if the majority comes back with one of the key problems, test yourself. Do you know the process? A lot of times, I say it all the time because I've seen it, where people get into high positions. They make all these changes. A lot of the changes don't make sense. They never test the end users. They just want to get paid, delegate, go home and drive their fancy cars or do other things like play golf. Leading is more than that. When God prepares you to lead in a position, like he puts you in a position to lead, before you get to that point where everything is, I would say, calm waters, you're still going to have some turbulence and everything else like that. God wants you to learn from the beginning. Because if you don't learn from the beginning, you're going to crash. That's number one. Number two, you got to learn the process to be able to show someone else. If those, even though you have some, like a key person in position to train staff, each department, you should know what goes on. And if it's a big company, it still looks good. Why? Because then you become irreplaceable. That doesn't mean you're going to do the job, but you should know the job. Like, I'm going to give you an example. When I was working for a stove manufacturer, there was a Indian guy. I don't know if I told you all the story, but there was an Indian guy who I think his education was from the UK. Like he went to school in the UK, and he was my boss. Actually, he was my boss. So anytime my supervisor, she went out on vacation or she was sick or whatever, I had to report to him. At that time, I really didn't like to deal with my supervisor's boss. Why? Because sometimes you deal with people, you get so used to their personality, and then they move out of the way for some reason, and you have to deal with the other person that they deal with, and it's just like, oh Lord. And especially if, like, for example, if that supervisor is always coming back stressed and don't like to deal with their boss, it's like, what am I going to be dealing with when I deal with their boss? Well, their supervisor. But when she went away on vacation, which she would do ever so often, I had to deal with him. And it was a blessing, believe it or not. No matter what people could say about him, he trained me. He taught me the whole concept of why it's important to be cross-trained. So I was cross-trained in a lot of different departments, and it made me not shy away from it after I left the job, where it was just like if I had to get trained in another department because that person was out, I did it. I didn't mind doing it. So That was the job fresh out of college. So I was trained in purchasing, accounts payable, shipping, you name it. I was doing it. Some of the things I didn't even understand, like the whole shipping process with getting, I would say, parts together. I didn't understand it, but I did it. I understood it on the spreadsheet, but going and walking the factory and seeing how things are done, I didn't understand it. But he broke it down to me. He was the type of person that would walk into the factory, put on a hard hat. He would spend, like, sometimes he would be out there for the whole week getting dirty, rolling up his sleeves, messing with blow torches and parts and everything, bolts. He was out there. And then there were times he was in the office and he was just training me. He showed me how to do different reports and do different things just using where I would download the information into the Excel spreadsheet and then create a report from there. And it was fancy. And then I would go into accounts payable, and if that person went on vacation, I did her job and so forth. I learned the process. That doesn't mean I was going to do it forever. I learned to respect it because then when I went to another job and my supervisor's name was Olga and she was annoying and she didn't train me, I learned to respect what my old boss trained, how he took the time to train me. His name was Jay. I never got a chance to say thank you because I didn't understand what it was all about until now. The process is very important because if, say for instance, God forbid, the 80 plus people, something happens and you got to start that company all over again, you want to be irreplaceable. You want to be able to say, I know how the process used to go, so if we're going to change it to make it better, I can be your man to know how it goes. And also, you want your staff to be safe and not always complaining, because sometimes when the smoke gets thick, people going to start moving out the way. And when the smoke clears, you might not have anybody to rebuild that house. What's happening nowadays, I see a lot of leaders that are stuck in their ego. And ego and pride is not of the Bible. Ego based and being prideful is not of the Bible. You got to get out of that ego of just wanting power and people to see you as such and just all that other craziness, because you'll make yourself look crazy in the end. The company will sit there and test you and see if you know the process, and if you don't know the process, trust me, your days will be numbered. That's all you got to do is just know the process. It's not something you got to do forever, but it's something you should know. Because another thing too, if you decide to leave the company and say there's another company that's doing the same thing, being hired is a piece of cake. Just know the process. So, like I said before, number one, do you know the process? Number two, take a poll on what the problem is. Don't have 50 million problems that you're trying to solve. You can't solve everybody's problem. And some people's problem might not even be a problem. They might be ego based too. Trust me. Not saying that you ego based, but I'm just saying. Take a poll. Whatever the majority is, out of those 80 plus people, like say 79, comes back and they all have the same problem, you got work to do. Test yourself and be honest. Be honest. Like I said, don't deflect whatever's going on onto someone else and dismiss what's going on, because then your problems is going to grow. And then eventually the company might say something like they need to get rid of you. God forbid. So that's it for today. For a one-on-one session, hit me up. Like I said, for the month of, well, not even the month of January, for some time, I will have 20% off on my sessions. Check me out on YouTube, like, subscribe, click the notification, check out my store, and get your download copy. Your money matters. Love me more and I love you more. Have a blessed week and stay blessed.